Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of What's on Your Desk?
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruver.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And since we're loving these episodes so much, this is another What's on Your Desk?
I love these.
I know it's like they kind of start off random, but we end up talking about something cool. So again, hang out with us. This is kind of the craziness part of it, but you're going to learn something from the episode too. Right?
Absolutely. All right, I'll start. So this is a collection of things, and you might be like, what? Okay. Kleenex, flosser, lip stuff, asthma inhaler. Now, these things shouldn't live in my office, right? Except for the fact that I found I would be sitting here on my computer doing work and, my nose would be running. I'd have to get up and go to the bathroom, come back with a Kleenex. I feel like lip stuff. And I'd have to go find my purse and get I can't breathe. I got something in my tooth. So what I realized is for my productivity, surround yourself with those practical things that you need to get through the day. Even if they're not office supplies or they're not work related, there are these personal items that you are going to need through the day. And to go find them, especially because I have a home office, like so many of us do, what is that doing to my productivity? Is that pulling me out of what I'm doing right now and forcing me to go find an inhaler, find the lip stuff? Because then what happens is I go, I'll just do a couple dishes. And suddenly 25 minutes has gone by. I've forgotten what I'm doing in my office. So I keep these practical things around me that I know I'm going to need. And that way I don't have to break what I'm doing here in my office. So they're practical and very Capricorn-y. But that's what I got for the first one.
Well, but it's a great productivity hack for people, right? Because when you start to get in the zone and you're working on a particular thing, to get up, have to walk, across the house to go and get something is going to take you out of that rhythm. So it's funny that you bring that up. This isn't my thing necessarily, but on my desk I have this orange bowl, and guess what's in it? Some lips kind of stuff, nail files, a little knife, stuff like that too. So I actually am doing the same stuff. Didn't even think about that. But people, here's a great productivity hack for you is in one of the things that I'd heard is if it takes you, especially if you're trying to create habits or build habits too, if it takes you more than 2 or 3 seconds to do something, you're probably not going to do it. And or you end up getting up and kind of breaking your routine. So that's, again, having stuff like that you're going to use near you is a fabulous productivity hack.
Yes. Now, on the flip side of that, just to be contrary to what I just said, please do get up and move every once in a while.
Oh, yes.
Don't stay so strapped to your desk that hours go by and you haven't moved, because I can do that too. Especially I've been really pushing the speaking thing and, doing speaking proposals and searching for speaking gigs. And I can easily sit here for 3 or 4 hours and not move. So do make sure you get up. You don't want to chain yourself to the desk. You do have to get up and pee and, do all that stuff. Please get up to pee. Don't do that in your office.
No bucket in the corner.
Whatever. Wasn't there some inventor that did that? All he did was drink milk and pee back in the milk bottles. Who was that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, it sounds weird. But, surround yourself with people that are going to make your life more productive and easier, but also do make sure you take a break, decentrate, get up, walk around the room, go do other things. So just to throw that in, not to be too strict about the whole don't get up thing.
All right, so here's my next one. I got to get into costume for this here. So
okay.
Just a minute. For those of you that are watching the video, you're gonna get this. For those of you that are listening audio wise, you're probably not gonna get it. But here we go. Thank you very much.
Oh my God!
I have my Elvis glasses full with the Elvis sideburn on them.
Please don't.
And I can't help falling in love with you. I don't know. Right. So anyway, I've got these Elvis, they're very goofy Elvis glasses, right?
Yes, they are.
But it reminds me of a couple things. So at one of the companies where I was an executive, we used to, Halloween was a big thing for us, and we'd have monthly employee meetings at the headquarters as well. And so I kind of became almost like the corporate clown, if you will, where I would actually dress up and do some really kind of dorky things.
Really?
So I used to, yeah, I know me, right? But yeah, so I had a full on Elvis costume with my glasses and everything like that to show up. But it's so it's kind of a reminder to me of some of that kind of stuff. But again, tying it back in on a more serious note, right? I mean, when you look at somebody like that who's an Elvis impersonator, there's lots of Elvis impersonators, right? But when they get into the role, baby, they're in the role, right? And so they show up and they act just like their version of Elvis would.
Yep.
We've talked about ego states, trying to get into the right ego state, showing up the way that we need to. Sometimes that means putting on costume or just like an actor would prepare for the role, of doing that too. So this also has a meaning for me of to remember to kind of show up in that ego state that need to be able to do whatever it is that I'm doing at the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
So thank you very much for listening.
we'll talk off I'll handle it, everybody. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, put him back in the closet. Put him back. Put him back.
And that's actually great. I'm just, I all about dressing up. I have a room full of costumes, but it reminds us to play.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing is, we've held up our little Yodas and our Miyagis and all this stuff. And all of that stuff actually too reminds us to play. And I think that's so missing as adults. And frankly, I kind of missed out on a lot of play as a kid because I was an only child and I was so serious and I was so into accomplishing things and my to-do list, even when I was a little kid, that I feel like I missed a lot of that frivolous play, that meaningless play. It wasn't play for purpose, except for just to play. And so to throw on those glasses and play for a couple seconds, that's a great way to get out of that seriousness, to get out of that two shift states, to give yourself a break in order to be more productive. So I think when we take breaks and we get silly a little bit, I think it's fabulous.
Well, and it's actually even on a deeper, level, even though I'm kind of a goofy guy, for me as an executive in a corporate environment, right? You're usually seen as like this very serious, unapproachable person as well. And by me actually kind of showing and, doing a little bit of play and kind of the self-deprecating humor and some other stuff, it allowed me to develop a different relationship with the employees in the company.
Sure.
And there was some backlash because some of the other executives didn't like that I had those relationships and they didn't, but it's like, but I showed up and actually played that way and it developed into actually real connections with people. So too, if you're a business owner, if you manage people, don't just be that stuffy person who never shows up to play. Actually let a little bit of your personality out and try to connect with people better, because it makes a huge difference in the culture in your organization and in your effectiveness with the team that you're with. So
absolutely let your soft underbelly come out every once in a while.
That's
fabulous. All right, so so many choices, so much clutter. So I have not ever pulled this off this has been up for ages. So this is a blank check that I have written to myself, to the tune of $5 million. And in the memo line, it says prosperity and grace. I wrote this in April of 2010. It is now 2020. And this has been pinned up on my bulletin board. And I see it every day because it's a little bit above eye level, but it's right by like some account numbers and things like that. I've right to my left there, I've got a little pegboard kind of thing. To me, it's a reminder of that prosperity and that abundance, and that the universe is generous and we all deserve to have those things we need to have those things we want. So to me, it's just that little paper reminder, because we all know what a check does. We've all written checks. We've all received checks. We know what that symbolism is. Numbers are incredibly potent symbols that go straight into our subconscious. So every time I look at that and I see those words prosperity and grace, I know that these things are floating to me from the universe. So I've had that pinned up there for 20 years or 10 years.
Well, and it's yeah, because you said it was 2010, right? So it's been 10 years. And here, I think it's it's a great thing too. I mean, it's up on a pegboard. It's kind of like, some of you have probably heard about vision boards, right? And a lot of people talk about vision boards. Well, I have one sitting over here too, that you can't see off to my right. But it's a physical representation of some of those things that we're trying to, visualize and actually have come into our lives. And I love the idea of the check. I actually have a check sitting up on mine too. It was one of those, if anybody that listens to Jack Canfield, there's a, great story that Jack tells about writing himself $100,000 check. And sure enough, he didn't get $100,000. It was 90 some $1,000. And he's like, that's probably close enough,
Yeah.
But it's one of those, again, it's to help us in visualizing some of these things, and the reminder, like for you, of abundance, having little things like that in your life that remind you, even on a subconscious level. You may not sit and stare at your vision board every day for 10 minutes, but you're seeing it out of the corner of your eye, and your subconscious is picking it up, whether you realize it or not. So that's again, I think on a way deeper level for everybody. This is one of the reasons why we're doing silly episodes like this as well, right? Is to help you realize to put things in your life to remind you or to encourage you to get where you want to be.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I believe that everything that we're surrounded by influences us. This is one of the reasons, and way back, if you remember when we talked about to talk to Sarah Caputo, and she was talking about organizational psychology and how to set up your space. And, and I actually just recently did this. I went to the store and I got a new kind of calendar thing, and I got little stacky trays because I'm a pile person. I don't do files, I do piles, which is fine if they're organized in such a way. So now, rather than having piles spread, I've got piles stacked, and I have found it to be so useful to me, and I am being so much more productive. So I put those systems in place. So getting rid of the clutter, as much as I joke about having a cluttered desk, to me, it's perfectly ordered. It works for me to have these things around me. So it's about setting up your space and putting things in your space that help you move forward, not just a bunch of crap piled around.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so my next one is this little statue. And again, for those of you that are listening audio-wise, this is the sculpture, The Thinker, that Rodin did, French sculptor. And I've actually seen, I can't remember, I believe I bought this one in San Francisco. There's several of the Thinker statues in different art museums and places around the world. I've seen it, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 times in person, and just got that. And the reason again is, like a silly story, right? When my kids were little, they listened to Arthur. So, it's a little cartoon character. Okay.
The movie with.
Oh yeah, no. This. So the cartoon Arthur. And in there's a lot of, singing and some other stuff. Anyway, Arthur was, was kind of a smart kind of kid, but there was this one kid in it that they called the brain. And he was like, the uber smart kid, probably a little bit nerdy. I probably can relate to him for a lot of reasons. But I remember in one of the episodes, he's like, I, the great brain, will now engage in my favorite activity, thinking. He goes through like that, and I don't know, for 20 seconds or something like that, and then at the end he's like, that was very satisfying, right? Which is, again, it's just goofy. But at the same point, I've always been a thinker. If you look at my Myers-Briggs, I'm a T, I'm a thinker. I've always been a thinker. I'm a thought leader. Most of what I do is the result of my thinking, creating new models, creating new content, and doing things like that, to where really a lot of what I've done, even in my corporate career, required a lot of thought. And I remember there was another executive whose office was down the hall from mine. And so he always had to walk by my office to go get coffee or go to the toilet or whatever. And I remember him walking by one time, and I'm just sitting there in my desk, and he stops and he goes, "Jason, do you get any work done? Every time I come by here, it looks like you're just sitting there and thinking." I'm like, "Bob, you don't know how much of my job is just thinking," right? And even now, in my businesses, a lot of what I do is thinking. And so it's, again, kind of the reminder to me of, even though it may not seem like quote unquote work to people, most of the work I actually do is in my mind and in thinking and the things that I create from my mind. So it's just another reminder for me for that.
Yeah, and that actually, what that reminds me of, what that sparks in me, is the fact that we all do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that some people ponder things, and then after however much time that is this finished thing, whereas I'm like, let's do it now, and I'll have an idea for a business, and 10 minutes later I'll have a website and I'll have business cards and I'll be advertising. It all comes to me, and I just like move on it. And my ex-husband was like you. He's a writer. He's a brilliant writer. He's actually going to be on the show at some point talking about travel and self-evolution, that sort of thing. But he would do that. He would mention this thing to me, and like months would go by. And I'm thinking, are you doing anything with that thing? And he would think about it, and it would percolate, and it would ruminate. And to me, my very driven Capricorn do-it-self was like, you're fucking around. Like, are you getting anything done? And then, like, after months, just this full, beautiful thing would be there. Like, he was hiding the flower somewhere, and then he'd pull it out, and it would be like, bing! There was just a whole flower. So it would... you showing the finger reminds me that we all have different processes, and that we have to be patient, not only with our own, but others. And I have a fun fact about that statue.
Oh, do you?
I do. So when I went to Rome, I toured the Vatican museums. Now, I figured, when am I going to get back to Rome? When am I going to get back to the Vatican Museum? So I paid for a private tour. So it was me and 3 other women who also happened to be from California, who also happened to be traveling alone, and the guide. This guide was amazing. She won top guide, and how many hundreds of guides are there? Like 3 years in a row.
Wow.
We're walking through the museum, and we got to see things that she was unlocking doors that nobody else gets to go into. And when we were in this Sistine Chapel, we were the only ones in there.
Mm.
Nobody else
in
there.
It's hard to get in there. I didn't get in because the waiting line was too long when we went. Yeah.
We walked in after hours. We're laying on the floor, looking at the ceiling. She's talking. We're doing a video. We're doing all this stuff you don't normally get to do. But anyway, we walked past this one statue, and I stopped. I kind of looked at it, and she goes, "Kathy, what are you thinking?" And I said, "I'm thinking that looks like a knockoff of the Thinker. Like, it's the same shape, it's the same this." And she goes, "That used to be when you were studying sculpture, they had these certain forms that you would start with, that as a student, then you made something from that base form. The Thinker is one of those." So
really? So it was like a way to teach the artists.
They'd hand them this already somewhat set shape, and then you could create whatever you wanted from it as a template, basically. And they had another one of these statues that came from the same template as the Thinker. And she's like, "Really cool that you noticed that." And I said, "Look, I understand patterns I get." And as soon as I looked at that, I went, "That looks like the Thinker." And I was totally right. It was really cool. So there's however many statues out there that came from basically the same starting point, the same template as the Thinker. So.
The same inspiration, right? If you will, and then each artist kind of took that. So, well, and I like what you said too, because each one of us is different. I mean, you're much more of a just jump in and start going, where I'm more of the thinker. But as an entrepreneur, I have to learn more too of how to balance that more, because either one of the extremes isn't going to necessarily serve you. But I know that that's my primary disposition, but I still have to get up off my butt and do something.
Right.
I can't just sit there forever, la, 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 kind of stuff. I actually have to do something about it too. But, there's a lot of power that can go in from some of the brain work, which again is why I geek out on all this stuff, because my main muscle, and I know it's not a muscle, is my brain, right? So I've got to do what I can to work my brain, but I've also got to temper that with the action that you take as well, and then stop, kind of pause, reflect on what happened. Okay, now take the next action and keep kind of moving forward as well.
And I think that's why we're such a good pair. Is, you know, when you and I started talking, we're like, let's do a retreat, and we were like, we had it planned out, and then we kind of stopped and went, wait, isn't that sort of the end result? Like, why are we starting? So we had this like getting into this whole, you know, and then same thing with the podcast. I was like, let's do a podcast, and I was ready to like, let's record now, and we're like, wait.
Yeah.
We don't have a title. We don't have a, you know. So the two of us work that yin and yang so nice together of the thinker and the doer, and the, you know.
Well, and it works out, but it's even because as we were talking here, I remembered somebody who I'd met. I don't even remember. It was in some social setting that I can't remember, but they were a writer as well. And I remember they I think just gotten out of a relationship. And I remember the person saying, you know, if I get into another relationship, it has to be with an artist kind of person, because, you know, like you were talking about with your ex-husband, that, you know, a lot of the creative process for a writer is thinking, and it doesn't seem like work to people who especially work with their hands or more physical in the work that they're doing. And, you know, kind of brought up that was one of the problems in their relationship. And so they recognized and knew that they needed somebody who could understand that when they're sitting around reading something or doing something else, they were actually doing work to prepare for whatever they're writing, you know, as well. But that we have to, again, kind of figure that out, but work what the right compromise, or the right compromise is not the right word, the right combination, collaboration kind of thing with, you know, the different people, especially in a team, trying to make sure that your team is complementing each other and you have these various skills or different ways of doing it together. Because when you do, you can be a much stronger team than if everybody's exactly the same way.
Absolutely. And that's why, and we have not yet had someone on to talk about diversity and inclusion. I actually have a really great guy for that we should have on. But that's one of the things he was saying is when you have different cultures, when you have different sexes, when you have different races, when you have different, you know, all of that lends different perspectives and a balance to a team, to an organization, that if you have just, you know, a bunch of old white guys, you're going to get a bunch of old white guy decisions. I'm using that as a vast example. But, you know, it's even looking at our government and looking at the Senate and looking at the Supreme Court, and, you know, there isn't diversity enough to represent this culture yet. Hopefully we're moving in that direction. But it's the same thing. It's like we want to have those differing types of acting people, actors, not actors like performers, but, you know, thinkers, doers, you know, all the Myers-Briggs stuff. There has to be a good combination of that. So I love these episodes.
All right. So that's a couple things from both of us, and a little, you know, postulating on the importance of them and how to, you know, but again, like we said before, it's one of the reasons why we're doing this is, you know, try to surround yourself with things that inspire you, that remind you of certain things, that help you to go and be that person that you want to be, and unlock that potential that's within all of us. So plus you get to learn weird things about us.
No more weird things about us, because we weren't weird enough.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, hey, this was fabulous. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.